Welcome to Therabytes, where we bring you bite-sized episodes, each one a piece of the puzzle that helps to explain the therapy world, the research behind it all, and how it relates to families. Hello, my name is Dr. Dana Poole. I'm a physiotherapist and the clinical lead at the Healthy Strides Foundation. It is my privilege to be hosting this podcast, one that is directed for parents of children with neurodisabilities. We hope to be able to answer some of your questions through this format. But to navigate our way through these big questions, we have the one and only, the lovely Naresha co-hosting this podcast. Welcome, Naresha.
What a wonderful morning.
Oh, what a wonderful morning. It's so good to be here.
It sure is. I mean, I like winter mornings. This morning I was driving in. I copped the rain. I copped the wind. I copped the coldness and no sunshine at all. But it was still nice because I like winter.
Well, I mean, I don't mind that weather when I'm tucked away, like either in my house, in my bed, or on the couch, watching some rom-com with a packet of chips and some chocolate.
Hey, have you got the same taste buds as me?
Oh, 100%. We've spoken about this before, remember?
Right
high fat, high sugar. There's this whole thing in our brain that makes us do it. It's not even my fault.
True.
But it's very comforting. Look, it's nice, always nice to be here, and I always think it's great to be able to have these conversations. And today, I thought for the Did You Know That segment, it would be the fact that did you know that this is episode 20? Whoa! That's actually really amazing. So we've had 20, well, we're about to have the 20th, but we've had 19 really great discussions.
Yeah. And
it's been good just to explore,
understand.
I guess, yeah, that's right. And just to discuss, I think it's been really great. And thank you so much to everyone who's provided some feedback. It's been really lovely and so encouraging that this is helpful. That's at the end of the day, we just want this to be helpful, and we don't have the answers to everything, but we can definitely journey it together and figure it out together. And where there's research and evidence, let's talk about it, and let's make sure we make the best decisions from the information that we have. But then, there's just the fact that we can support each other through just big questions, hey?
Definitely. I mean, experiences that we experience with these children.
Yeah.
And our families and our support unit.
Yeah. And it can feel so and I have these conversations all the time. Like whilst we're all together, you're right. Yeah, because you're like, does anyone else have this? Who else do you bring it up with? And I feel like I had a quick look at the question you had for me today, and I thought, actually, this is a good question to discuss as well, because I feel like this could be very easy to feel like you're in the lonesome for this. Yeah,
definitely.
What's your question?
Okay.
Or what's the topic, I suppose, because I think we're going to discuss it together.
Well, the topic is development behaviours. And I wanted to know whether neurodisability children behaviour changes, are they the same as the neurotypical children?
Well, big question. Yes.
Or is it next level, or is it the same? That kind of question.
Yeah, there's so many things interacting with that, and I would say I've probably had this conversation with most families that I've come across in my 20 years as a clinician, and I would say that our children all experience the same kind of emotions, developmentally as well.
Right.
But sometimes things can seem a lot more exaggerated or more defined because our children also have their own unique impairments, things that influence how they function. And when I mean impairments, I mean things like the really obvious, like spasticity, dystonia, hypotonia. It can make them really tired, frustrated with movement, for example. Vision impairment, not being sure what's around them, and that may make them appear a little bit more anxious when new people come about.
Okay.
Or they might have more sensory processing issues, so things that we don't think are that annoying, loud noises kind of thing.
They do.
They would, and different kind of triggers that sometimes you don't know about it until the moment comes.
Yeah.
And I think those are the factors that can make it seem so much more, because sometimes with those things, like we spoke about last week, is you have medication to help with those, and then they can have their side effect too.
Yes.
And so suddenly you've got the normal developmental milestones of let's talk about the usual kids having their tantrums. You have that because often kids don't know how to emotionally regulate.
Right.
They often can't communicate all their needs and wants. Like a toddler often can't do that.
Yep.
Then you put on top of that a child that can't move as well themselves to get to what they want. Mm-hmm. Put on top of that some communication challenges, so they really can't get their point across.
Right, okay.
And then suddenly you have this situation where no one's understanding each other. There's a lot of things compounding and we don't understand what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And it seems like a whole lot more.
It sure does.
Kind of the answer.
I think so. It's like an explosion. I mean, I must admit, I'm experiencing that. He's a couple of months into being 8 years. It was peaceful.
So peaceful.
It was so great before. But now, obviously, at one stage, I thought it might be his medication, the new medication, which we discussed.
Which certainly would have influenced things.
Earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. It may have been the trigger for, experiencing these different types of emotions that he just doesn't know how to cope with. Mm-hmm. So I've been, obviously sharing my experiences with those around me, both family, both related to school, psychologists at school.
Yeah.
And they all seem to think that, knowing his condition of cerebral palsy, and then they saying, but that's how normal children are also, experiencing life. They do go through a stage where they are confused about their emotions. They are frustrated about things that they don't necessarily need to be frustrated about. But to them, it's obviously quite big.
Yes.
So it's like I'm trying to juggle as to say, okay, this is obviously of a normal child, but I never experienced that with my first child.
Okay.
So I don't know what happened there. It's like maybe I wasn't around for too long around him or what. But I didn't experience it with the other one. And then this one is like a full-on explosion of emotions. And it's like, it just wears me down.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to identify.
And there's no doubt the fact that will be very weighing on you. I mean, the first point is, this is kind of funny. It's the older child versus the second child. Older child, firstborn, you can always pick them, right? I'm an older child, so I can say that. I think we're probably a bit more resilient. Let's say that to all our younger siblings. That'll cause a fight amongst the younger siblings. And we always make fun of the fact. But, jokes aside, within one family, same parents, seemingly same environment, but, each child is different and you do parent differently as time goes on. Generationally, there's those things too. But, there are those elements to it. But I would say that whilst if we take it back a little bit to understand there's really clever people who do what they call an economics analysis. They look at a health condition and they go, what is the cost of that condition? Right. The cost of that condition to the government, the cost of that condition to people, like us as parents as well. And so let's take, for example, cerebral palsy, which in 2008, the national cost for cerebral palsy on the whole health system was $1.8 billion, making it one of the most costliest conditions in Australia, top 5. Right. Now, fast forward 10 years, 2018, I don't know how I have this information in my head, but I do. They redid the analysis and knowing obviously NDIS was here as well. Right. And they found that the cost was now $5.2 billion. Wow. So it's increased a lot in that time. Yeah. But the interesting factor, what they've factored into that is the cost, that the biggest contribution to that cost of 41.8%. Again, I'm a researcher, so I know these numbers. So 41.8% of that cost is attributed to loss of well-being. And the biggest contributor to loss of well-being is functional mobility restrictions.
Oh, okay.
Right. So when you start breaking that down, when they factor this in, they look at the cost to, parents taking time off work, how much time they need to spend on their child versus other more productive times contributing. That's why this is such a complex analysis. Wow. But well-being is the biggest contributor how we feel. And yet the biggest reason why we have loss of well-being is because of mobility restrictions. And when you consider so many of our kids have mobility restrictions, so in cerebral palsy, just over 40% rely on equipment and physical assistance. But for the other 60%, they still have restrictions of their mobility that can still be really challenging. So you have those elements already. That's just purely mobility that can restrict how someone can participate.
Yeah.
And can add to a lot of more other frustrations. They're seeing their peers doing things that they can't do, and those sort of feelings, those big emotions, and how to process them. There is no doubt that there is an additional element there that we are dealing with.
Right. Okay.
But I do also think that there are things that are just very typical developmentally, and they also need to be managed from a behaviour perspective. So if they are being, I don't know, they've been frustrated but they're rude, you still need to adjust that behaviour so they're not rude children. You know what I mean? There's still things that you can address as parents from a behaviour perspective, and I'm talking to another adult right now. You can wait your turn. So the world doesn't evolve around them. Because they are surrounded by adults a lot of the time. So there's another factor is we regulate things for them a lot of the time because we're adults, we're parents, we take over. But then when they go to school and there's less adults around, suddenly they're around more other kids. My parent isn't here to help me regulate my emotions. Here I am now. So there's a lot of just changes that happen. You think about early intervention, they're in therapy a lot. They're around adults. That's why it's so important we make sure our kids are in, really developmentally appropriate things like going to daycare, going to play groups, being around other kids so that they start to experience those things too, so they learn how to develop those mechanisms of self-regulation.
Now you're making my mind tick because with the older one, because obviously I went full time then. He was mostly in daycare. He started daycare pretty young. So he was kind of like immune to everything, as well as creating that environment of friends first.
Resilience is a big factor. We talk about resilience a lot, and they learn how the different coping mechanisms that do happen from that. It's amazing how other kids can set the tone for you to go, okay, if I do this way, I can't play with them, so I need to, because whereas if you're there, you'd be like, hey, you're being rude, or you're crying. Let me help you through it. Let me give you a cuddle for it. So you're constantly helping them to regulate. And it comes out of love.
That's very good that you said that. He said it the other day. He goes, Mummy, my friend, he didn't want to play with me.
Oh, yes. Oh, I remember those days.
I said, no, he goes, can I tell my teacher? I said, no, you don't need to tell your teacher about things like that. It's okay for your friend not to want to play with you because sometimes you don't want to play with him. But maybe tomorrow he'll want to play with you. That's okay. It's really that's a very small.
But they need to learn to cope with that, and those things happen from these experiences. Too. So it's almost, you have to provide those opportunities for them to learn. And there's this big term about at the moment, I think it's worth bringing it up, but it's like the promotion of risky play. And risky play is now being defined by some researchers who've gone like, what's risky play? It's like play in the playground without supervision. It's going to a friend's house. It's climbing a tree. It's get on your bike and riding your bike to see someone, like things that you do by yourself. And I was looking at that and they're saying basically there's a reduction in risky play because we're all around our kids all the time. And I remember when I was growing up in the 80s, like I mean, my parents didn't really care, I suppose, but they were still protective. But I went out all the time. I went to the local playground. I remember climbing a tree, falling over, getting winded, grazing my leg. And you just learn those things. We just were out more and we're just out less, whether we want to blame social media, whatever it is. But I guess if you want to think about with our kids, with neurodevelopmental disorders, if they have mobility restrictions, coming back to
what
that,
else are they going to do but stay indoors? That's right.
So that's why us researchers are always trying to find ways of how can we get our kids out there, be part of groups, be physically active. Why are interventions on physical activity so important? It's because we know mobility is the gateway for so much participation. And we want to promote our children to be able to go out there and experience it and, fall, graze their knee and go, oh, ouchie, and, get back up again and things like that. But it's very related to a lot of the challenges our kids face but it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go as well because you've spent an entire lifetime with them so far looking out for them.
Hey, I'm good about letting him go. I let him experience everything.
Oh, look, we do see you do it. So us as therapists, we watch your boy with you sometimes with this walker, and like we're like hover right around him, and you're like, you know what, you're gonna make it, and we're like, oh, we need to learn from Narasha. Okay. And it goes both ways. We need to let go too. This is why we keep talking about hands-off therapy.
That's right.
We shouldn't be always touching our kids too, because they need to experience movement.
Yeah. But it's different though. I'm a parent, it's okay. But you guys obviously have to take the extra care.
Oh,
to make sure
100%. No kid is going to hurt themselves in a session, because do no harm is the first thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But, we take our lead from the parents as well.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
if you hovered about them, then I'll be like, oh my gosh, we need to hover more.
Yeah,
and this
that's
is
true.
not just a parent, it's everyone thing.
Yeah.
We want the best for our kids, and but we could have a tendency of being too much around them, which can affect how they behave and how they learn to self-regulate. I think is kind of part of it too.
Sounds good.
Deep question. I feel like it's something we can keep talking about because it's a big one. Hey?
I know, it is.
Yeah.
And, there's lots of concepts about behaviours, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, I mean, like I said, originally I thought it was the medication, but now we've subtracted the medication from the equation. So it's not really medication. It's obviously just him developing at his own pace.
Yes.
And feeling the emotions that he's feeling.
Yes.
And knowing how to handle them. And that's obviously
parenting. And sometimes it's hard. I think probably most of the time it's hard.
Yeah.
But take the joy when the joy comes too. But
I just hope that he gets out of this phase pretty fast.
He will. This is why it's good to talk about it, because I'm sure there's a lot of parents going, yep.
I'm sure there is.
But, I talk to lovely families and kids who are like 16, 17, 18. Like, I've seen kids grow up, and they do get through it.
Oh, okay.
They're beautiful.
You're giving me hope.
They're wonderful, and they're just wonderful human beings. You do need to get through this phase, and understand the things that do contribute to it. So like physicality does impact well-being, and we need to consider that, and we've got to find ways to support them, which is why we do what we do. All links in.
Cool.
Good question. Thank you very much. Nice. Episode 20. Thanks to everyone for listening to that episode, and we'll talk to you all again really soon.
Bye.
Bye.